Welcome back to MVM. Today we're going to take a look at the game Antematter, coming soon from Bardshark. Antematter is a sci-fi space opera style game where you are taking on the role of a captain of a faction who is literally vying for a seat at the table. This galactic organization called the Corner Booth, who manipulates events from behind the scenes, has an opening. But in order for you to be elevated to that position, you're going to have to outplay and outwit your other opponents in an abstract game that brings in elements of poker and a galactic board where you're going to play for the fate of the universe. Now, each one of these factions is going to be represented by a specific deck that's going to give you a little bit of artwork of the faction, and keep in mind that all of these factions are very asymmetrical and play very differently. What's really cool is that on the ends of these, you're actually going to have a little quote that kind of represents the feeling of this faction. Now, there are 6 of these faction decks because you are going to be able to play with up to 6 players. There's going to be 25 cards in each one of these decks. This deck is your crew. You're going to be drawing cards from this deck, playing cards from this deck, and using them to kind of manipulate the state of the game. So you're going to see here a board already set up for 6 players. You're going to see each faction color, which is linked to that deck, is going to start in a very specific base. And you're going to start with 3 ships. You have your rocks and your ravens, and each one of these ships is going to move around the board, known as the conflux, by using a resource called burn. And you're going to be able to generate that burn by playing certain cards from your hand. Now, of course, you want to maneuver on this board because you want to plunder, which is kind of a key mechanic in this game. You're going to notice on the board you have all of these different discs that represent the different Nephilim currencies. These can all be plundered. In addition, you're going to notice the green discs. These green discs represent dive bars where you can go to recruit crew. Now, during setup, it's important to note that the game does come with a standard deck of cards. You're going to be using this deck of cards both to play the poker style game that takes place within Antematter and also for some setup purposes. First of all, each player is going to draw a card, and the player with the highest card is going to get to place the planets first. Now, as you see here, there are 5 planets starting with purple and going all the way down to green. Each one of these planets is going to take up a specific rung of the galactic ring. Then each one of these planets is going to move. So the first player gets to choose the location of the purple planet, and then each other planet is going to be placed out kind of in a line coming off of it. Now, each one of these planets is going to give you a little bit of a different bonus later on in the game, so their position is kind of important. And then you're going to move every other planet by drawing cards from the top of this deck and moving these planets a certain number of spaces around the board. Each one of these planets is going to have a little number of tiers down here. For example, this is showing 2 tiers. It's going to show the number of spaces that planet's going to move every round. But at the start of the game, you're actually going to multiply this value. So this purple is going to move 16 spaces. And you're going to do the same thing for each one of these planets. For example, 18 spaces around. So after you have the position of the planets set here, you're going to look at where the green planet is, and you're going to place that green planet's twin all the way on the other side of the board opposite from it. So that green planet's going to be here as well. This is going to ensure that the board has a very modular setup. These planets are going to be in different positions every time. Now, there's actually 2 things you want to focus on when playing the game. First of all, you want to have the largest stack of Nephilim possible. This represents that galactic poker game that's happening. You want to rake in everyone else's chips and end up with the largest stack of chips. In addition, you'll have to earn a token of respect from the corner booth. They will not let you in unless you have one of these tokens, and you have to earn this by having a stack of chips large enough to earn their respect. Now, this threshold is going to vary based on the number of players at the table. In a 6-player game, you need 3,000 Nephilim to earn this token and 3,500 Nephilim to win the game. Now, you have to hold on to this token for 1 whole round, so you have to still compete with other players who might end up getting their own tokens and eventually getting more Nephilim than you. So getting one of these tokens does not mean an automatic victory. Now, each player is going to start the game with 300 Nephilim broken up in a variety of different denominations. Of course, your goal is to wipe out the other players and take all of their Nephilim. However, unlike an actual poker game, there is no player elimination here. If you are completely wiped out, you're considered to have gone broke. You return all of your ships back to your starting base, and you replenish yourself back up to that 300 Nephilim. So you actually get to kind of restart the game, but you're never knocked out completely. Now, I already showed you how there are those Nephilim discs on the board that you can grab with your ships in order to gain more Nephilim. However, the main way you're going to be gaining Nephilim is by playing a poker game with the other players in the table. Now, I've alluded to this. This is actually one of the core mechanics of the game. You're going to be using that deck of cards to basically play a hand of poker using, of course, an ante. So you'll see the name of the game reflected there. You're going to be buying into that ante every round and playing what is kind of a standard game of poker. However, a number of your crew from your deck are going to have abilities that trigger during the poker phase. Each crew is going to tell you during which phase you can use that card. Cards that can be played during poker are going to allow you to modify that game in a variety of different ways and kind of basically cheat at playing poker, which makes sense for the stakes that you're playing at here in the game. Now, the actual style of poker we're using here is based on Texas Hold'em. So for those of you who are poker players, you kind of already know how this is going to play out. Every player is going to be dealt 2 cards to make up their hand, and then you're going to have a betting phase. Each player is going to get to determine if they want to add chips to the pot or not based on the values of the cards in their hands. Like in poker, you're looking for different combinations of cards, pairs, 3 of a kind. You're looking for full houses, straights, basically any kind of normal legal poker hand. Once everyone's determined that they're going to stay in, you're going to reveal 3 more cards. This is called the flop. Now, these are basic poker terms, and of course, this is still Texas Hold'em. So you're going to be able to then look at your cards, the cards that are on the table, and you're going to continue bidding. You're going to be able to do this basically 3 times until there are 5 cards out on the playing field and 2 cards in your hand. Out of these, you're going to choose the 5 cards that make your best hand, and that is going to be how you're scored. The player that has the best hand is going to win the pot. Now, of course, that's all kind of basic poker. With the addition of those crew cards, allowing you to do things like maybe change your bet or not have to put more chips in order to stay in the race, or just to influence maybe the values of some of these chips. There's a lot of different ways you can play those crew cards, but that idea of understanding how Texas Hold'em is played is kind of crucial to understanding the game itself. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into the mechanics there, but you're going to be playing that hand of poker every round. For those who don't really know poker, you're going to have a little player aid that's actually going to talk you through all the steps of Texas Hold'em. So you don't need to come to this game as a Texas Hold'em expert at all. And of course, this is just one element of the game, one way to score chips. So if you're a really bad poker player, it's okay. You can make up for it by outsmarting other players in the conflux. So now that I've kind of explained the core mechanics of the game, let me talk about how the game is actually played. So you're going to be played over 2 phases, which I've already alluded to, and that is the loot phase and the poker phase. And you're going to be able to play cards during either of these phases. Each card says whether it is a loot card or a poker card. During the loot phase, you're going to be moving your ships across the board. You're going to get 3 burns to spend, plus any burns you would get from playing cards from your hand. You're going to get to move these ships a number of spaces. Each one can move a different number of spaces for every burn spent. So you have your rock, which is your bigger ship here, and you have your 2 smaller ravens. A rock can only move a space of 1. Of course, if you have some of those crew cards, that can modify that movement. Now, ravens actually have a special ability to basically build space bridges for the rocks. They can build these bridges, and then when rocks move into them, this is actually going to allow them to move across these bridges for 1 movement space. Now, your ravens here can move up to 2 spaces for every burn. The goal is to kind of plunder these different spaces out on the board by landing on them and taking those tokens. These dive tokens can be plundered by any ship, and when you do take that token, you're going to be able to draw back up to 7 cards from your hand. So getting these tokens can be very important over the course of the game because you're going to want to be playing these cards every phase. You can also plunder the planets, and each one of these planets is going to give you a different bonus based on which planet you're plundering. These planets are either going to give you Nephilim chips of a certain color, or they're going to give you cargo. Cargo are the black discs that you have to collect to trade into the center planet. If you manage to actually move into the center planet, you're going to be able to trade each of those cargo in for 100 Nephilim. So those are the main ways you're going to get Nephilim on the board, but you have to be careful because these planets are going to move every round. Now, once that's done, you're going to enter the poker phase. And I already talked about how we're using Texas Hold'em here. Now, this game is all about the ante. So during the poker phase, you're going to be anteing with a different color of chip. The first stage, it's a white chip. The next stage, it's a red chip. Then the third, it's a blue chip. So by the end of the game, you're going to be looking at big pots. In addition, each player can add their own chips to supplement that ante in order to increase the stakes and make it more difficult for you to stay in order to try to win the pot. And Texas Hold'em is all about trying to outwit and outsmart the other players by kind of trying to predict maybe what they have in their hand, or you can just choose to fold and not even participate and try to earn Nephilim in other ways. Now, of course, again, you're going to be able to play cards during this poker phase to manipulate the way that the poker hand turns out. Another way that this game changes up the poker formula is with the inclusion of Grifter cards. Grifters take the place of jokers. If you're dealt one, you have the option you can expose that grifter. If you do, you'll get a new card and you'll just discard that grifter out of the game. However, you can keep your grifter in your hand to try to con your opponents. If you have a grifter when your cards are revealed, you cannot win the pot during the final showdown. However, if you manage to bluff your opponents and end the round with that grifter still in your hand, you gain 20 times the ante value in Nephilim. So it's kind of worth it to try to bluff your opponents with those cards. Now, if a grifter does appear in the flop, meaning it comes up in those first 3 cards that are revealed, you're actually going to remove that grifter from play and replace it with a powerful Enigma card. Now, these Enigma cards are going to change up the way the game is played. You're going to choose one and add it to the row, and then draw the top card of the deck to replace the grifter. This one has every player revealing their hand and potentially discarding a card to replace it from the top of the deck, which is kind of a crazy twist on that poker game. At the end of the poker phase, whoever won is going to collect all of the chips. Now, like I said, there's 2 ways to win this poker phase. Either you are the last one standing, meaning everyone else has folded, or you get to the end, everyone reveals their hand, and you have the best hand. Of course, you can use that player aid card to figure out who has the best hand in a poker game. Now, after the poker phase, you're going to move each one of these planets, and again, you're looking at the number of tiers on the base of each one of these minis to determine how many spaces it's going to move. The red planet only moves 1 space, purple moves 2, blue moves 2. The white planet is going to actually move 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and each one of the green planets is going to rotate 2 spaces. Now, once that's done, the dealer button is going to pass to the next player, and you're going to start another round with that loot phase. And of course, this is going to continue turn after turn until both in-game conditions are met, meaning one player has both that corner booth token and they have the allotted number of Nephilim they need to win the game. And of course, that varies based on player count. If you can hold this token for an entire round, plus still have the amount of Nephilim you need, then you'll win the game. If 2 players or more fulfill those victor conditions on the same turn, then you're going to look at who has the most Nephilim overall, and they are given the position at the corner booth. So guys, that is Antematter. This game is on Kickstarter right now. So take a look at their Kickstarter page to see all the final components. Everything I showed you here was just a prototype. And of course, I have access to those 6 factions. And keep in mind, each one of those 6 factions plays very differently. There's even like a hints and tips sheet that comes in the rulebook that's going to kind of talk you through how to play your specific faction strengths and weaknesses. So there may be more factions exposed on the Kickstarter page. Take a look at the factions and let me know which one you're most excited to play. Now, a lot of you might choose based on your favorite color, but keep in mind, these factions all play very differently. So guys, thank you for watching this look at Antematter, and I will see you next time.
Hey everyone, if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider dinging the old bell below. That is going to help notify you of new videos that are uploaded to our channel. And as always, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and please consider watching all of our videos, one of which you can see right here to my left.